who is the Director of Government Relations for this nonprofit organization called ProEnglish, joins us now. Suzanne, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Tell me a little bit about ProEnglish and your involvement with them.
Well, ProEnglish, we were founded in 1994. We're a 501c3 nonprofit grassroots lobbying group based in Arlington, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. And we advocate English to be the official language of government at the local, state, and federal levels. We fight for it in the courts as well, and in the court of public opinion, and we believe that English language is a fundamental component to national unity, e pluribus unum, from many one. And we were talking about the melting pot earlier, right before the segment, that it's important that the melting pot melts, and that's the assimilation factor, that assimilation is superior to the multiculturalism theory that you mentioned. Europe, so many countries in Europe, they're announcing that multiculturalism has failed. It's diversity divides. It's not uniting. People aren't assimilating into the culture, and just in the United States, you can live in certain areas where you can go your whole life and never learn the language, but you're really limited to those areas.
Yeah, economically, that's right. Unless you've got some business in a foreign country and that's how you're making your money and you're just living in the United States. We talked about this. I said, last night being down here in D.C., we were able to connect with some old friends, and one of them was a friend of ours that used to be a priest at my church in Newport. And he was talking about one of the parishes he had was a Syrian community. And it was a huge community church and been there since the 20s. And he said, it used to be that the church brought in, they had all these people coming over from Syria and Lebanon, and they didn't speak English. And the church actually ran those classes, and people came in within their community but learned together how to speak the language. And that was their road to prosperity, because without having a good command of the English language, it's going to be difficult to compete. And we don't seem to be understanding that nowadays. We somehow went from a melting pot to this patchwork quilt where we can all keep our own cultures and identities. And that's fine. But if we don't have that common language, people are not going to be able to grow. You were telling me a really interesting story about McDonald's Corporation, right. The fast food corporation.
Right. And, with the church example, it's interesting how it's flipped, because the pro-immigrant argument has come from helping immigrants assimilate and learn English to telling them that they don't need to learn English and they just need to retain their native culture.
Or that it's the government's responsibility. Right. The government has to teach them language.
Right. And so people say, well, you want English to be the official language. How are, poor immigrants who are coming over, even legal immigrants, how are they going to learn English if the government is really diverting all its funds to multilingual services? How will they learn the language? And
you don't.
Right.
You don't. I can tell you that from being in Spain years ago and living in Spain for a brief period. If you completely fall back on your own language, you never advance. If I was there, talk about full immersion, there was no one that spoke English at the time. And right. I really was forced to learn, and I learned rapidly.
Mm-hmm. Right. And delaying English, obviously, delaying English is bad. The faster you learn it, when you get here, learn it right away. And McDonald's is a good example. People always forget there are some businesses, and they don't have to be, Walmart's not doing it, but
talk about entry level. Those positions in McDonald's. People laugh about, you're going to be a burger flipper at McDonald's, but tell me what McDonald's is doing right now.
McDonald's is saying to their lower skilled workers, the ones who are flipping hamburgers, in the kitchen,
or work in the kitchen.
Right, saying after work, we will teach you, we'll have an English program, and we will pay you to participate in it, so that when you learn the language, you are able to, progress to, the cash register and make more money doing that. And then after doing that, you can progress to, a store manager. And then you can, rise up so they can promote within, as opposed to, having the same workers who just stay there all the time, and they can have, lots of companies like to have, employees who have kind of started at the bottom and risen
promote
to the top.
Hire from within.
So that's just one example of companies having to take the expense on themselves, as opposed to the government really helping out with that.
In this country during the Great Migration of the late 1800s, early 1900s, when people were coming from all over the world, and again, they understood that to succeed, they needed that one common language. It wasn't done in the schools per se. I mean, my husband's family came from Lebanon, and the grandparents did, barely spoke the language and spoke with a very heavy accent, but they understood that those kids needed to go to school and learn that language. Again, we're failing our kids now with all of these ESL programs because we keep them sort of mired in their own language, and we don't give them the chance to learn English, and that's a huge expense to school systems.
Right, and 60% of the English language learners who are in elementary school and grade school, they are the children of immigrants. And actually, a huge problem with that is that there is no English language requirement for legal immigrants, and there's a very weak, obviously, requirement for citizenship. And of course, you have the illegal immigration problem. So these children who are in the ESL programs, they're learning a little bit of English during the day, but when they go home, their
back to
parents
native
don't speak
language.
any English, so
Exactly.
it's not reinforced.
Exactly.
And it's just delayed. It takes them years to learn it. I mean, actually in New Jersey, there was a story last week, and they were talking about the test to graduate high school. And this actually came up during the DREAM Act because people were saying, well, why would Pro-English oppose the DREAM Act? Of course, you